So we're here in Southeast Houston, and I'm going to talk to B, a local Houston landlord who's been landlording for about 5 years. We're going to go in and check out her unit immediately after her last tenant, who she evicted, vacated. Let's get started. Houston, Texas, the fourth largest city in the U.S., is known as the energy capital of the world. With a metro-wide population of more than 7.1 million, the Houston residential market provides a booming opportunity to Texas landlords whose tenants enjoy access to art, sports, and great food. Today, we're checking out one such opportunity. B, this week's landlord, walked us up to her second floor, 2-bed, 1-bath, deed-restricted apartment in Southeast Houston. So specifically with this unit, what was your experience with the most recent tenant you had here?
This tenant was a challenge in every respect. I had to eventually evict her, which happened officially 2 weeks ago, where she vacated the property. But from the get-go, it was a challenge getting in touch with her. She wouldn't, there were specific clauses in the lease, such as maintaining renter's insurance, keeping the common areas clean. She didn't have up-to-date contact information. She would only reply in the wee hours of the morning at like 1 or 2 a.m. if she did reply at all. I noticed that she had a dog, even though there's no pets allowed. So then she said it wasn't her dog, it was an ESA. The story kept changing. It got to a point where I told her I'm not renewing the lease. I'm going to terminate it. I gave her a couple of months to find a different place. Never happened. Eventually she overstayed the lease, and I've started eviction proceedings.
Let's talk about the damages that were on the property. Would you say that these were damages from normal use or normal wear and tear, or would you say that the tenant was negligently responsible for these damages?
There was some normal wear and tear, but there was also things that was a bit of negligence, as well as just blatant lease violations. She painted the common area property, which is not allowed to be touched by owners, much less tenants, in addition to the kitchen sink damage and the bathroom damage and things like that to appliances.
How long was this tenant in possession?
14 months.
14 months. And when did you first come upon or discover these types of damages?
5 months in.
And did you issue written notices? Did you charge her for repairs?
I didn't charge her for repairs. I did speak to her verbally. I also sent her text messages, and then I progressed to email. What I've realized now in my lease, I need to update the lease to make sure there's clear financial penalties if there's any lease violations of this degree again.
Now, by financial penalties, do you mean that they pay the cost of the repair, or that you're attributing some really just kind of arbitrary amount that they now owe?
I was thinking more of the latter, but the former sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, and it's what I tend to advise to landlords is, don't just make up a number, because your number may fall short. You may say, well, that's a $50, breach violation fee when the repair costs, $800.
Right. Okay.
But if the breach violation fee is $100, but the repair was only $75. That's when judges get kind of queasy with things like that. So when it's a direct result of a violation and a direct cost to remedy that violation, very palatable. Every judge is going to go with that.
Got it.
So you own 4 units and you've been doing this for 5 years. What has been your most shocking interaction with a tenant?
What always surprises me is when tenants are very hostile. And so you kind of fear for your own safety because you don't know how stable or what ends they're going to go to. With one tenant, they were always very hostile over email, phone, whatever, especially when they were being reported by the HOA for violating community terms and living. One of them was asked to vacate. She vacated, but she punched in holes in the entire property before she left. She didn't provide the last month's rent. She just was very, very hostile, and you don't know if they're going to come after you later. I think similarly, I've been accused of discrimination because, you have a lot of she said, he said sort of situations. So now I make sure there are witnesses, it's recorded, there's absolutely no shadow of a doubt, because what you may say and what actually happened is, in a court of law, is very hard to prove unless you have all of that kind of documented. So that's sort of two of the key lessons learned from all the less than positive interactions with tenants.
Yeah. So what we tend to recommend is to record your communication. One easy way to do it is to never exclusively have oral communication. Mm-hmm. If all of your communication is recorded through, say, an email or written correspondence, then it's never unclear what the landlord said to the tenant or vice versa. Additionally, if someone is being hostile or causing damage, including vandalism, one way that landlords can protect themselves is with a requirement that tenants purchase liability insurance, mm-hmm. and that they maintain that insurance throughout the course of the tenancy. And I don't know if that's one of your requirements, whether you require liability insurance, but some landlords do as a mechanism of protecting the property against this kind of damage from just willful intent. I know I suggested in the lease that I draw up, I make it both optional and required. And, some landlords, for whatever reason, decide, no, I think I'll just keep it optional. By them opting out when it's required, or canceling it midway, they're putting you at risk. And firsthand what those risks look like because you paid out of pocket for someone's damage and there was no liability on their part. They essentially have a blank check and they can just do whatever they want, and you're the one who's covering that check. It should be something that's taken care of early on. And like I mentioned before, if they're opting not to do it, you're issuing notices of default. And you're very early on, not just letting it slide, letting it pass and saying, well, it was a good try on my part, but I guess I wasn't able to bag this one. That's someone you got to get rid of. Because if they agreed from the onset to do it and they fail to do it, the indication is they're going to breach over and over and over again, and this is not a good fit.
For this apartment, when I actually came to inspect the property, the tenant actually changed the locks on me without notice, authorization, any sort of approval. Can you do anything if they change the locks before?
Well, it really depends what your lease says. If your lease is absolutely silent on the tenant's ability to alter the premises in any way, in fact, if the lease allows alteration, you're kind of opening the door, and that's not something that can be closed without it coming to a final official termination. But if your lease is unequivocal and it says specifically you are not allowed to do this, whether it's 1 day in or 1,000 days in, you can come in, you can drill that lock, change it. I would certainly issue a notice of default if that's the only violation they've got, but let them know this is not something you're allowed to do. You're not allowed to install a second bathroom or build a patio or paint the entire interior. The same is true of installing a lock. And whether they say, well, this is for my safety. That may be true, but safety from whom? Because they don't have a method, or at least they shouldn't in the lease, to alienate you from the property. Right. You're the one person who at all times should have emergency access at the very least, but routine access otherwise in compliance with your lease.
Is a notice of default the same thing as a lease violation, meaning like that's the official way of communicating a lease violation? You send them a notice of default?
Yeah, they're synonymous. Okay. But if it's not in writing, it's probably not usable in a court of law. So you're going to want a written notice of default sent to your tenant, and then you're going to want to follow up on them. So if, for example, somebody switches the locks and you say, look, you're not allowed to do this, you have 3 days to switch it back, and or to give me access to the current lock. If they fail to do that, you send a new notice and say, look, you've got another 3 days. They fail again. This is your last notice. If you fail to do this, I will issue a notice to vacate. And it is possible that in quick succession, you issue 3 notices of default, none of them are cured, and then you have to proceed with a notice to vacate. But if you've only done this, say, through voicemails that you've left, or through suggestions that you've made, or just a conversation that you had, that's really just not going to be enforceable, and the court's not going to accept that potentially, even if they've done the thing. If you haven't given them notice, in accordance with state law, then it's very hard for a court to say or to agree with you that you're entitled to possession. Documented notice is extremely important. Early and follow-up is strongly encouraged by me, so that if someone is perpetually violating and you just let it go month after month after month, you send another message to that tenant that your violation, it's not real, it's not legitimate. And so to ask the court to later enforce it after months and months and months of you simply letting it pass, it's not likely. So you've been doing this for 5 years. What's the biggest thing you've learned, and what's your opinion of the current real estate market?
So the biggest thing I've learned is the importance of documentation and having a good system in place in terms of record keeping and making sure that you are keeping on top of your own leases, right? Another important thing is the importance of networks, to be able to have your people, whether it's contractors or specialists or tradespeople, to be able to address a problem quickly. I think the real estate market right now, I think it's in an interesting place. I mean, the people are struggling to buy their first home. Average home costing like about $450,000 now. I think there is a lot of change that's coming, especially with the rates potentially being cut again in the future. So with interest rates going down, it might be an opportunity for more people to get into real estate, whether as a landlord or first-time owner. But I think it's an opportunity, because I think rates have been high for so long and prices haven't really given way until like the last couple of months. So I think with rates going down, it'll be interesting to see if prices will continue to go up or to allow more people to enter the market.
So what would you say is your best landlord attribute? And conversely, what would you say is the one thing you'd like to work on to improve in the coming year?
So I would say my best attribute is to be able to put myself in other person's shoes. I don't rent things that I wouldn't feel comfortable living in. So I feel like, I'm pretty fair and I'm responsive. So it's, and I'm able to provide people with housing in places where they might not have access to clean, affordable housing. On the flip side, I would say that there is a lot that I have to learn about just general construction and maintaining a house and maintaining property and getting, a stronger network of people within the local market who's trustworthy. So just being able to say, okay, well, I have a good foundation guy, but I don't have a good roofing company, that I know can come and address my needs right away. So just being able to grow that network and, along with, fellow investors. I don't really have that much interaction with local folks who are also in the same business. So just I would say working on that, sort of building my connections and network, would be an important goal.
Well, naturally, I'm going to plug my own groups to you. We have a group on Facebook. It's a Facebook group. And so if all you do is join Facebook to join this group, we have over 7,000 Texas landlords who are part of that. And every single day they're sharing ideas, asking for things like roofers or paint guys or drywall guys who they know and trust in individual markets throughout the state of Texas. And so that might be a resource. If you're not part of a local real estate group, there are numerous groups in the Houston area that meet generally on a monthly basis, some of them more often than that. I'm part of a group, I'm part of a couple of groups, so I'm not going to differentiate between them. But, I see groups doing really great things, educating landlords and on not just the investment side, but some of the, kind of the practical elements that are involved in landlording. So definitely, if you don't have a group or a mentor, I always encourage landlords to find one.
I found your YouTube site relatively recently, and it's been a wealth of information. So I appreciate, everything you're putting out there.
I'm glad. So think about your experience over the last 5 years. If you had a magic wand and you could just change instantly one thing about the business itself, what would it be?
Well, I think one of my current challenges, it's not maybe the defining one, but just being able to navigate ESA rules. I think, airlines have difficulty, restaurants have difficulty, and I don't think landlords are any different. What happens when they bring in an animal and they say it's a support animal, and their documentation is relatively flimsy, right? I think there's a lot of resources to help tenants. If you're going through the eviction process or any of that, there's all of these like legal aid, college places and regulation to help protect your rights. But for small mom and pop landlords, right, not corporate ones, there's no, this could be your sole means of survival, right? Or helping you pay some extra bills. And there's not that much out there. If you go and say, hey, I have a tenant who's harassing me or terrorizing me and they refuse to leave, you're pretty much always seen kind of as not the bad guy, but there's no resources out for you unless freer resources, which is why I appreciate your YouTube channel, because it was one of the few that I was like, oh, there's somebody, helping us. There's a lot of regulation and there's a lot of resources on the tenant side, but just as much, I think, especially with smaller mom and pop landlords, I wish there was more, resources for us to help us, advocate for ourselves or make the case, especially when, you're trying to do everything right and you have a tenant who is making your life a lot more difficult because they're either destroying your property or harassing you or making it dangerous for you to kind of live in your usual bubble.
Now, for those of you who are just starting out or maybe just don't have a whole lot of experience with the eviction process, I have an offer for you that we are making available to all of our clients during the month of October, particularly for those in Texas. If you have rental property in the state of Texas and are issuing notices or would like to learn a better way to issue notices and file evictions and even handle eviction appeals in the state of Texas, then you may want to check out our eviction course. There's a link in the description below, but you can also check out attorneyeg.com/EV for more information on that eviction course. We walk you through the process of your notices, of filing, and even the kinds of things that you can expect at trial and on appeal. If you would like a course where we go step by step from notice to judgment to help you recover your property faster, I strongly encourage you to check out attorneyeg.com/EV, our Texas eviction course from start to finish. Again, I'm going to walk you through multiple modules. I give you samples of your notices, samples of an eviction petition, and plenty of resources along with my step-by-step training to help you file your own eviction with success. If you need more information, feel free to send us an email at info@attorneyeg.com and check us out at attorneyeg.com/EV for information on our Texas eviction course.